Okay, hi YouTube. We're gonna cover something we don't usually cover. So, you see that in my corner? I get news this way. Sometimes I decide just, to add these guys to my RSS feeds. Like I should block this one just because of the fact that it's already in my RSS feeds over here. Because I have I use this particular the feed reader. This is I forget the name of the add-on. Oh yeah, it's FeedBro. So yeah, I mean yeah, that's the name of it. But anyways, this article came across my desk, and I've wasted too much time talking about it. But y- you know, PlayStation 6 could get a massive upgrade with PlayStation 24 gigabytes of RAM. And it came by way of the fact that this is part of Microsoft's recommended articles and everything that they're sending. To articles that they think that you may be interested in. But I saw this and the headline, and all I could think is, why are we even talking the PlayStation 6? You know, it's not as if not as if the console generation of games, this generation has had enough releases or exclusives that could even justify the purchase of a PlayStation 5 in the first place. To be honest with you, if I were to rank consoles at this point, I really hated the N64 back in the day. And I mean that was notwithstanding realizing that there were some games that were like mildly of interest on it, like Conker's Bad Fur Day and such. But one of the reasons why I really despise the N64 is that I was a turn-based RPG fan, and I love to play those kinds of games, and there was just, well, admittedly, there are a couple of them on the N64. There just were not enough of them compared to how many were available on the PlayStation during the era, and that pretty much justified, primarily using the PlayStation and very rarely ever even touching the N64. And plus I was legitimately terrible as a kid, with platformers. I had a lot of trouble with them. Like, I'm really bad with platformers. So, I just had all those problems, and I'm not complaining about my difficulty with platformers in such a way where I'm like, oh yeah, everybody should change it, because if somebody loves platformers, that should be changed to a, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I suck at platformers, and as a result, I don't really tend to opt into buying them, or if it's some game that I really want to play, like Xenogears was, and there's platforming issues, I'll just use the Dex drive or something, or save states that are shared among people to start the game, you know somewhere else, after the horrible jumps, and it push comes to shove, I mean, maybe I'll go and create those myself somehow, or engage in some kind of hacking operation to, bypass them, and go through the trouble. But, uh, I've always been terrible at them, and it made me like have this pathological loathing of the N64 as a consequence of it, And that was despite, to the contrary, like the amusing songs and everything that came out in Conkers and everything, and the funny and the humor of it, which, you know, it it kind of got me and grabbed me that Conker was a little bit more. It surprised me that Nintendo was moving in that direction because I had grown up with them as a company, and it seemed to me that they had stayed within a very safe, family-friendly boundary, at the time. And yet, if you look at it nowadays, you will find that depending on the kind of content that you're producing, you will actually see further, more censorship, on Sony's side of the equation than you will on Nintendo's. I mean, if it's anime and in the SW, Sony's gonna crack down on it like really quickly, whereas Nintendo is relatively lax. And I'm looking at this and I'm seeing what's going on, and I'm seeing the PlayStation 6, and I can honestly tell you the PlayStation 5 has displaced my hatred for the N64. It is now my least favorite console of all time. Number one, PlayStation 5. Number two, Nintendo 64. And why has it moved into that position? Because anytime there's an exclusive, it's going to be available on PC. Even even FF7R is now coming, ultimately to the Nintendo Switch 2, and it's being ported at this point. I mean, this is a joke. And now we're talking about the RAM and the specs that are going to be in a console that I'm not buying. The PlayStation 5 was literally the last time that I'm opting into this process at all. I can take some credit ultimately for helping, the PlayStation 5 in its security be defeated. I was thanked by CNL Pointer for stepping forward to provide, all that data to the scene, but I'm done. Like, I will not be opting into this process during the PlayStation 6 era. The PlayStation 6 scene, when it emerges, you're gonna have to make do without me, because I'm not interested in this. I mean, how much money was wasted on live services? They tried to dump all that money into Concord, and then it failed spectacularly. And looking at the Concord characters and everything through fresh eyes, and as somebody that's interested in potentially giving a new franchise a chance and everything, and is open-minded to falling in love with a new set of characters, but I look at them and I'm just like, these are the guys you want to go with? It's Concord. Are you fucking for real? And yet, here we are. And we're talking, despite the complete lack of exclusives, despite Square Enix snubbing PlayStation, and basically now offering their exclusives up on other consoles, despite the shift in strategy from and despite all that, despite not having any exclusives to justify the PlayStation 5 purchase in the first place, making all of us kick ourselves and wonder why we wasted money on this goddamn, pile of shit that doesn't have any fucking games that anybody actually wants to play available on it, and turning it into, a glorified PlayStation 4 emulator where it's just a souped up thing to play PlayStation 4 games. I mean, and if you look at the market, you'll find that to this day, or until very recently at the very least, most people that were using the PlayStation 5 were using it to play PlayStation 4 titles. And despite these market realities that were going on and continue to be a reality, we're already talking about how the PlayStation 6 will have 24 gigabytes of RAM. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a fuck. I don't give a fuck, and nobody else does either. Nobody. Nobody cares. Nobody wants the PlayStation 6. No. So many of us, the PlayStation 5 was the last time that we are giving Sony a chance. We're done with them on this side of the equation. To Sony and the people that are making the decisions on your video game branches, as far as we're concerned, we've said how we feel about this one, and you've ignored us. We're not going to take no for an answer. You're going to get exclusives, or you're not getting any money at all. There's no room for negotiation, and there's no room to refuse us. You will do what we want, bow down, kiss the ring, and release exclusives, or you're not getting paid at all. Are we clear? We're not, and as far as these gaming companies are concerned, those of you who disrespect and hate your fans can suck my dick. I'm not paying you one penny. You will kiss the ring, or we will destroy you. That's it. We're done.